let's say that, imagine there's a big glass wall here, okay? And we can look through the wall. And on the other side of, and it's a thick glass, by the way, you couldn't bust through it, but you can see through it. And in the room on the other side are these huge metal stainless steel cylinders. There's probably 40 or 50 of them in there, okay? And inside those cylinders are, around the edges of the inside of the cylinders, are about a half dozen bodies. And we're going to talk about that word later, because that's an important word. It has a lot of different meanings in this context. But on the inside are about a half dozen bodies. They are in liquid nitrogen. And those bodies have been preserved in a way that I'm going to tell you about. At the top of the cylinder, there's room for, I forget how many, but a bunch of heads, just heads, not body, not the bodies. Okay, so they're at the top. Okay? So there they are. You can look through and see the cylinders, and there are guards around to make sure you're not trying to bust through the glass or something.
Excuse me?
Yes?
The heads are detached from the body?
Yes. Yeah, the heads are from different bodies.
Okay. Excuse me, will you give me your name?
Calvin Mercer, M-E-R-C-E-R.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, this is not science fiction movie here. This is not science fiction. We are in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is a beautiful town in Arizona near Phoenix. And we are at the headquarters of Alcor, A-L-C-O-R, which is the leading cryonics company in the world, the best one. There are a number of them, and there's some in Russia, one in Russia, I think. But Alcor is the arguably the leading one, okay? And those bodies that we know are inside those cylinders, we call them bodies. Okay, so yeah, we have someone come here. We call them bodies, and legally they are dead, according to the laws of Arizona and in the U.S. Okay, but the company Alcor does not see them as dead. The company Alcor calls these bodies patients, and they are still alive. We're going to talk about that, what that means. Hey, just to catch you up, there's a big glass, just to catch you up with the rest of the group, there's a big glass wall here, and inside we're looking through at these big stainless steel containers, inside, around of which are bodies, and on the top are a bunch of heads, preserved in liquid nitrogen. Okay. So according to Alcor, these are patients, and they are not dead. They are legally dead, but they are not, according to Alcor, dead. And so Alcor has tremendous backup in terms of generators in case the electricity goes out. They have guards 24/7, just like you would have at a hospital or a nursing home. They're going to be ready for backup because they see these bodies as patients. Now, this is not a totally new idea. Benjamin Franklin speculated about preserving people in suspended states, but of course he was a very creative thinker and he was just throwing that out. But this whole idea has been massively and sophisticatedly developed. And back in the 60s, did you
Yes, I don't want to get ahead of your presentation, but I'm an undertaker, grew up in it. And I cannot help but I'm burning to ask this question. Did they freeze before they died, or did they actually die?
Yeah, let me get to that later.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, and I'm glad you're here because I can see your fascination with this. Back in probably the 60s, you can hear stories of hippies, who put their pets in the freezer locker to, thaw them out later and that sort of thing. Well, it's now developed into, it's not a freezing process. It is a chemical process called vitrification. And what happens is the members of Alcor, once they are pronounced legally dead, okay, by the laws of our government, once they are pronounced legally dead, then Alcor rushes in with their process of preservation. And it looks something like this. So if you are living in, say, Greenville, and you are a member, then if you are in the hospital terminal, then Alcor has contracted with a standby team out of Florida, I think, a company, and they will come in and they will consult with the medical team, and they will let the doctors know, okay, this person is a member of Alcor to be cryonically preserved, and because the hospital staff has to be educated about this because it's kind of weird, right? And so they will educate the staff, and they will say, as soon as you pronounce this person legally dead, then this person has given us permission to come in and begin the process. Now, from Alcor's perspective, they want the member to be pronounced legally dead as soon as possible because they want to come in and start the preservation process before the brain turns to mush. Because when the brain turns to mush, there's nothing to preserve and nothing to bring back later. Right? So Alcor is waiting in the wings, and as soon as the doctor pronounces legal death, then Alcor comes in with a system that they cool the body down and put it in some sort of container, put it on a flight to Scottsdale, Arizona, and then it goes through the lab there where they engage in the vitrification process, which is a chemical process. This is my term. It's sort of like antifreeze. Basically, what it's going to do, that chemical process, is it freezes the brain, quote unquote, freezes the brain in its current state. It sort of turns it into like again, this is not literally correct, but it turns it into glass in a sense. But it preserves the brain. It goes into that, that process, and then it moves into the stainless steel holding tank and is surrounded by liquid nitrogen and is preserved. Okay, so it cost about $200,000 to be a member of Alcor and go through this preservation. $200,000, and then a monthly maintenance fee. And then if you, don't want to do the $200,000 full body preservation, then you can do the neuropreservation, which is the head only, okay, which is about $90,000. Now, there's two parts to this talk today, okay? The first part, and here's another one of our members coming in. So the first part is talking about Alcor and cryonics and make sure that we understand that and you have any questions, and I'm sure our undertaker will have more questions about this process, okay? But I want you to understand that. And then the second part we'll move into, because this sounds very kooky and fringe, and I understand that, okay? But what I want to do in the second part is I want to put this in a larger context and show you why people have interest in this and how it reflects certain trends in society that have to do with technology and biomedicine. All right, but I don't want to get there yet. We're going to stay with the kooky part. All right. So, Anne, welcome. Just to briefly bring you up, we've looked through a big glass wall here into these stainless steel containers that contain around the inside edges, these bodies that have been preserved. And then on the top are probably a half dozen or so heads that have been preserved that were separated from the bodies. Okay.
Will they ever be put back together?
Well, we're going to talk about that. Okay. So, I'm describing, my visit to Scottsdale, Arizona, to the Alcor organization. Now, here is the assertions, claims by Alcor. Okay. There's three important pieces here. Number one, they assert and claim that life can be stopped and restarted if the basic structure of the biology, particularly the brain, is preserved. Right? Now they point to that human embryos can be preserved for years. They point to hyperthermic victims can survive for an hour or so in really cold conditions. They point to large animals that go into cardiac arrest for 3 hours or so at very low temperatures and come back. The heart stops also during neurosurgery. They stop the heart in a deep cooling process. So Alcor argues. Now, it's debatable, and I'm not a scientist or I don't have technical expertise to argue this, but they argue that life can be stopped and restarted if you maintain the basic structure of the brain, right? Number two, they argue that low temperatures and chemical agents, what I just described, vitrification and low temperatures, can indeed preserve organ structure, including the brain. And then the third part, which is the most iffy part, I think, is that in the future, far future, if necessary, future technologies, biomedical technologies, are going to be able to bring back the preserved body and reanimate it. Now, can they do that now? No. But we all know about AI. We all know how fast technology is unfolding. And so what they argue is that in the future, and when they say in the future, this could be 100 years from now, 500 years from now. I mean, look at how fast technology is proceeding, right? So give it 100 years. Give it 500 years. They say that technologies like molecular nanotechnology, tissue engineering, and technologies that we don't even know about at this point will be able to come in and repair any damage and use genetic engineering or tissue engineering to grow body parts that are needed and to kind of put the body back together and reanimate it. Now, just down the road at Wake Forest University is one of the world famous tissue engineering facilities. They have grown a number of body parts in the test tube, in the lab. And so again, 100 years from now, look back, that may look very primitive. I mean, pacemakers blew everybody's mind when they decades ago came out, and now it's normal, right? So give it 100 years, give it 500 years. Alcor, the cryonics industry, says that the technologies will be there. And so the key focus for the cryonics energy industry now is on preserving with integrity so that there is something to bring back later, right? So all the research focus is mostly on getting to the person once they are legally pronounced dead and preserving their brain and spinal cord in a way that there's something there with integrity to bring back later. Now, obviously there's a lot of skepticism about cryonics, and it's viewed as fringe and kooky. And I have a hard-nosed professor friend, I won't name his name, at ECU, who keeps up with my research, and we have conversations about it. And he said, Calvin, he said, when they bring back a mouse or bring back a monkey, you let me know, and I might sign up. Okay? Now, that's a good point. It's a skeptical, appropriately academic, skeptical kind of comment from a scientist. Alcor's response, which I heard when I was there, is, do you want to be a member of the control group or the experimental group? Because we know what's going to happen to the control group. They're going to be buried or burned if they're going to be cremated. And so Alcor is saying, we know what's going to happen if you don't do cryonics. And so that's kind of their flippant remark to my academic friend. Okay? So just a footnote about the legal pronouncing of death. So when I was there at the Alcor conference, and by the way, let me maybe talk about that for just a minute. So I'm friends with Aubrey DeGrey, D-E-G-R-E-Y. Aubrey DeGrey, well, I'm professional friends with Aubrey DeGrey. Aubrey DeGrey is one of the world's leading researchers. He raises money and has these various research programs going for terminating aging in the human species. I mean, he is focused on that, terminating aging in the human species. And Aubrey is well known in these circles. And he got Alcor to invite me to speak at their national convention. I knew very little about cryonics at that time, but I went. And why did they want a religion professor to speak at their national convention? Well, because cryonics is viewed as fringe and kooky, and they want to sort of mainstream it. They want, of course, research dollars, and they want general acceptance in the community, in the society, and they know that society is influenced, for good or bad, and I think it can be both ways, society is influenced by religion. And so they said, we don't know much about religion. Let's bring in a religion scholar to help us understand religion so that we can better get our message out into society that is influenced by religion, right? So that's why they wanted me there. And, but, I got to sit around at the table with them at dinner and talk, and I went to the social settings and all that. And I was not sure what I was going to find when I got there. I thought it might be a whole bunch of aging hippies who are scared to die and they want to figure out how to avoid death, or I didn't know what I was going to find. At the social hour, I showed up. Susan went with me, my wife, and I was very surprised because what you find are a lot of young professionals, a lot of computer information types, medical doctors, healthcare professionals, information technologists. And I was like, what is going on? Now, there were some aging hippies there. But I was thinking, what's going on here? What is this? And I figured it out after many conversations. We've been to the moon. We've quote unquote, discovered America, right? We've tamed the Wild West, right? What's this generation going to do? It's going to take on death. It's like a frontier. It's like a project, do you see? So many of the young professionals are not there because they are worried about death. It's just an exciting project to take on, okay? And I think that's, anyway, back to the hallway outside of the hospital here, where an Alcor member is on their deathbed. So I heard a doctor speak. I don't know if there's any medical professionals in here you might have. This is anecdotal, but I heard a medical professional give a talk at the Alcor conference, and he said that, he said, we doctors, we don't talk about this a lot in public. We talk about it around the water fountain. He said, but there's a time frame in which you can pronounce death. You can kind of do it real soon, or you can just wait a few minutes. He said it's not. So death is an interpretation to some degree, right? I mean, there was a time in our history when, the heart stops and we put them in the ground, and there are these stories, people banging on to get out. So it's not the heart stopping anymore. It's, I guess, a flat line, right? The way this doctor explained it, he said, if the doctor, there's in the room and the person flatlines or whatever, he said, if the doctor's not in a hurry, they may hang around a few minutes, but if they're in a hurry to get down to another patient, they might go ahead, right? So there's a window there, right? At least of maybe a few minutes or so, according to this one doctor, right? So Alcor's focus is on consulting with that doctor and say, look, we want you to pronounce death early in this process. And then Alcor comes in because they want to get that cooling down process before the brain starts losing its integrity, right? So the whole focus is on preservation with integrity so that 500 years down the road, or when let's say cancer killed the patient, when that cancer is cured, and they figure out how to bring, the patients back, then they bring them back and apply that cancer treatment, right? That's kind of the idea. So there are Alcor patients, Alcor members, who have some terminal illness, and they're moving toward the end of life, and they actually move to Scottsdale. And I think there's some maybe nursing home there or something that understands the situation, and they move there so that when they're pronounced dead, they don't have to go down this elaborate cooling system and get on an airplane that might crash or get delayed at the airport. They're right there, and they just move over to the lab at Alcor, and they move through the process. Okay? Are any questions pop up at this point in terms of the process and what Alcor is up to?
From a religious standpoint,
Christians believe that at some point everybody who believes in Jesus will be resurrected.
Yes.
So how is that different? But you got to be on the club to have your body resurrected by Jesus.
So I'll speak to that question. Let me use that excellent question to open up a larger conversation. There are lots of theological issues that are raised here, and ethical issues that are raised. Right? Maybe let's get a couple of the ethical issues out of the way, and then we'll go to the harder theological issues. So one of the ethical issues about cryonics and a lot of these biomedical technology breakthroughs that I talk about in some of my other topics are expensive. And so the more progressive religionists that I operate with or work with, one of their oppositions to all this is not that it's sinful or satanic or anything like that, but it has to do with access and with equitable in terms of being accessible to everyone. They're concerned about justice issues. And so what is Alcor's response to that? Well, $200,000 and a monthly fee does sound expensive, but there's two things to say about that. One is that Alcor says if you have the money, then they shouldn't be criticized, because if probably plenty of us, we have some serious heart issue, we're going to be right down to Vidant. It's not Vidant now, right? Something else. We'll be right down to the local hospital, and hundreds of thousands of dollars if we need it, or if our insurance will pay for it, for expensive medical knee replacements. So Alcor says, look, don't talk to us about the ethics of how expensive this is. We spend tons of money on all kinds of procedures. And if we believe there's a sound basis for this working, that's my money, that's my call. Okay, that's one response. The other response is something like this, that my students, my traditional age students, who are poor working down at McDonald's to try to get through college, can afford to be an Alcor member and sign up. How can they do that? Insurance. If you're young and relatively healthy, you can get life insurance for a few dollars a month, right? And so there's an insurance agent in Scottsdale who will work with you to sign you up for insurance, and then you sign the insurance over to Alcor, and so you pay a few dollars a month, and then Alcor gets the insurance and you're in. So there's that. All right. Those are some of the. There may be other ethical questions, but let's go to the theological questions, which are significant. So, Pat, you want to state your question again? Because we could come at this and say it again, because I want to start with your question.
People, those who are followers of Jesus are going, according to the scriptures, are going to be resurrected.
Right.
So, you don't need to be frozen. You're going to be resurrected by Jesus.
Okay, so I'm going to play the devil's advocate here, okay? I'm not necessarily giving you my view, I'm just going to play the devil's advocate. So if somebody says, well, look, you don't need to go through all this process with CRYONICS because, when you die, you're just going to be resurrected. Okay, if you have a heart attack, why do you call 911? You're going to be resurrected. I mean, Alcor is going to view this as a unusual, atypical, they admit that, but they're going to try to frame this as a medical procedure that should be available to people just like a heart attack intervention. So Alcor will say, whatever the answer is to the person who says, I'm having a heart attack, I'm not going to call 911 because I'm going to be resurrected. Alcor will say, the same answer applies to this.
Well, from a theological response, Jesus healed people who were sick. He didn't say you shouldn't go to the doctor. He didn't say you shouldn't try to remain in this life as long as you can.
Again, play the devil's advocate. I'm not a member, by the way. But after the show today, we have forms over here. You can sign up and get a discount to these services. So I'm not a member, in full disclosure, but I'm playing the devil's advocate here.
Jesus dealt with the devil.
What was your comment? I forgot.
Jesus dealt with the devil. That's okay.
Well, so yeah, Jesus healed people, and so Alcor would say, again, this is just, breakthrough technology that is doing the same thing pacemakers did decades ago that people thought was kind of like odd, putting a computer and a battery inside your body. I mean, that was pretty bizarre, right? It's not bizarre now, it's just normal. And so, here's what I think. I think that in the coming years, maybe decades, I don't know how long it'll take, there's going to be some big-time breakthroughs in aging, in terms of the possibility of people living for hundreds of years. Now, that's another LLC, lifelong learning program, right? So, but I think that there are some things coming. I think that, and again, I'm not a technical expert. I'm not a doctor, a medical doctor, but I'm very much in touch with people who are on the technical side of this. And from my read of things, I think that I don't see anybody in here that might fit the category. But I think that the traditional age college students that I teach, 18, 19, 20, I think when they get 60 and 70, I think there is some significant possibility they may have options to live for hundreds of years. I know that's a wild statement, but we can talk about that if you want to. But in the coming years, and maybe decade or two, there's going to be, very possibly, some biomedical breakthroughs, some breakthroughs on aging. AI is going to help facilitate this with its tremendous potential. And there's going to be some breakthroughs. It may come something like this. Front page news in the New York Times and all over the other papers that they have used genetic engineering, probably CRISPR technology, to quadruple the lifespan of a mouse. Boom, that's going to be on the front pages. They figured out how to do this. Because of the transferability of research from mice to humans, the message is going to hit the general public like it hasn't done yet. That, wow, give it a few more decades, the experts are saying we can add 500 years to people's lives through tissue engineering, genetic engineering, blah, blah, blah. And when that happens, the survival instinct in human beings, Freud helped us see, the survival instinct is deep and profound. I mean, it's what drives the species, is deep and profound. And when the general public gets some hint that they could live indefinitely, then there's going to be, but that it might not get implemented in human beings until, 20 or 30 or 40 more years of research, then the telephone at Alcor is going to ring off the hook. And I think the applications for membership are going to skyrocket. I said this in my summary, why I think this is going to happen. It's going to skyrocket, and they are not going to be able to handle. So you better sign up today. Okay. So
in other words, we're talking about stock in that company.
Well, let me make sure. Anything else, Pat, on that point? I want to speak to resurrection too, but let me get Ann's comment here first.
If we believe that we are spiritual entities walking around in meat bodies, and when the meat body dies and the spiritual me what is going to happen to that spiritual me if the meat body is sitting somewhere
Okay.
frozen?
Here's Alcor's response to that. All right, it's a great question. I knew y'all were going to have great questions. Here's Alcor's response to that, is that Alcor says that the patients, they call them patients, that are preserved in the stainless steel tank, right, that they liken that to a patient that's in a coma. Okay? They say,
But why
it's not really any different than a coma. And so whatever you think is happening to the soul, now that's a whole big conversation right there. Soul, what is it? How does it fit with the body? And all that. But, and I'll get into that only if it is relevant. But whatever you think is happening, Alcor would say, whatever you think is happening to the spiritual dimension of the human being in a long coma, they'll say, that's probably the same thing that's happening to the preserved patient. Because they don't see them as dead. Do you see? They're not dead.
But if as a spiritual entity, I could be free of that old body that's
Yeah.
not working and get a new body,
Yeah.
why would I want to have that old body sitting over there frozen?
Okay. That's a great question, and I do have an answer to it. So look, nobody in the cryonics industry is saying we want to, quote unquote, freeze somebody and then bring back a dilapidated, poorly working body. Nobody's saying that. What they want and their goal is to bring back the person, which they believe the person is embedded in the memories and personality of the brain, which is why they focus on preserving the brain. We want to bring back that person, and then we want to use nanotechnology, tissue engineering, CRISPR, and whatever AI helps us come up with to design and create and grow a healthy, vibrant body. And so this is a little outside the usual way of thinking about it, but to bring in Pat's question, one way of thinking about bringing back a preserved Alcor patient is that it could conceivably be viewed as a type of resurrection. If you look at the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians, Paul said that they asked Paul, because this is in 1 Corinthians 15, they asked him about the resurrection, and they said, well, what kind of body, Paul? I think that's where Paul first calls them fools. And then he didn't mince words. But then he says that the body will be, the soma, the body, will be imperishable, powerful, and glorified. Now, Alcor is not a religious organization, but they can buy right into that, into what Paul said. So it's going to be imperishable. The technologies that are going to be available are going to bring back and design a body with those patients who died of cancer, legally died of cancer, that is going to be imperishable, is going to be powerful, more powerful and vigorous than it was when they died at age 60, 80, whatever. And it's going to be glorified.
Can I offer a response to this, dear lady?
Sure.
I think if we are believers, we have a worldview and a mindset of how things would be. But I think people who are not believers of any type, atheists or Wiccans or whoever, they wouldn't have that same inner feeling that you're expressing. See, they don't have that belief system. And I think so it wouldn't matter. That wouldn't be a consideration for them, that what's going to happen to my soul and my spirit.
Yeah, I think
That's
that's
a good
true. I think that's true, but and I also think there are Christian theological ways of looking at this that can embrace it.
From a practical standpoint, there are currently over 7 billion, and that's with a B, people in the world today.
Yes.
I don't know how many times you can go through freezing and come back, but at some point, if you keep doubling this up,
Yeah.
there ain't gonna be enough space in the world for people to be physically on the world. The world won't be big enough to hold all these people.
Okay, that's a great question, and do I have, let's see, yes, I have a response.
All right.
So, there's a couple of responses here. One, there's 2 or 3 things to say about that, because that's a concern. Not only with the Alcor's program of preserving people, but also if people start living indefinitely. So one thing to say about that is that the transhumanist community that pushes these programs says that and they're always going to turn the argument back on you. So they're going to say, okay, if you think that, then get rid of the hospitals, get rid of the cancer research, get rid of the, right? I mean, why is traditional medicine worked so daggone hard to keep people around? Just let all that go and let nature take its course. So that's one thing they would say. The other thing that I think is more of a valid response is that there are always disruptions when there are technological developments. It may be in the job world or whatever. There's always disruptions, and we have to deal with those. So the disruption of people living indefinitely and creating a population explosion crisis, how could we deal with that? One way to deal with it is say, well, let's just not use this technology and let people die. Okay, but another way to deal with it, making a law is never as simple as I'm going to say it, but theoretically it could work, and it has worked in China and other places, is that you could say to people, you can make a law that, look, if you partake of this technology that allows you to live indefinitely, then you cannot have children. If you decide you don't want to take this technology and you want to die of cancer or whatever, then you can have children. Now, implementing laws is never that simple, but that law would take care of that issue. And then here's from Calvin. This is more me, because I'm an efficiency expert, which is one of the reasons I hate bureaucracies. But I'm an efficiency expert. So you take a fully functioning adult. Think about the investment that has gone into creating a fully functioning adult in society. I mean, the educational investment, the dollars of health care, the hopefully parental love and support and guidance, the mentoring. When you get to a fully functioning adult who's paying taxes and being a participating citizen, that is a tremendous investment that society has made in that person. And they're full of wisdom. If they've lived a good life, they're full of wisdom, they're contributing. And then what do? Just let them die. That seems highly inefficient to me. Okay, so that's just my personal PS. So, the population issue, yes, it's an issue, but the transhumanists would say, don't get rid of people who are fully functioning, adults to bring in new people that are not even here yet. And at the very least, and transhumanists will never, I've never heard a transhumanist or cryonics advocate say, we should make everybody do this. We should make it, no. They're all about options and freedom. Just don't keep me from doing it, right? Don't, I want to have this option. You can choose not to.
Will you define transhumanists as you're using it?
I will. So, and we can go back to the technology of cryonics and all that at any point, but I want to shift this to a kind of the what's larger going on, okay? So cryonics is a stopgap measure. It is like, it's not, nobody wants to live in a stainless steel tank forever. That's just an interim stopgap measure because we don't have the cure for cancer or pancreatic cancer that killed me now, you see. So transhumanism is a intellectual and cultural movement that advocates the aggressive use of technologies, genetic, robotics, any kind of biomedical, body part replacement, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence. It advocates the aggressive use of these technologies to enhance human beings physically, cognitively, emotionally, spiritually. I've got a whole chapter here called Spirit Tech, and even morally. So while I'm talking, I'm going to pass this around. I've got this at the section, at the chapter on cryonics. I'm going to start with the Undertaker, but this is so.
Another quick
So
thought.
cryonics.
These transhumanists want a perfect body to work with.
They want as near perfect as you can. They certainly want one that's not going to wear out, that's not going to suffer. Yeah. So transhumanism uses these technologies to enhance human beings. So listen to this letter to Mother Nature, and this will capture the transhumanist vision that includes cryonics, as well as anything I can say, both in terms of content and in terms of tone. Okay? So this is a letter to Mother Nature. I'm not going to read the whole letter. It's all good. It's on the internet, but I'm going to read enough of it that you can get the drift. All right? Dear Mother Nature, sorry to disturb you, but we humans, your offspring, come to you with some things to say. We want to thank you for the many wonderful qualities that you have bestowed upon us. You have raised us from simple self-replicating chemicals to trillion-celled mammals. You have given us free reign of the planet. You have given us a lifespan longer than almost any of our other animals. You have endowed us with a complex brain, giving us the capacity for language, reason, foresight, curiosity, and creativity. You have given us the capacity for self-understanding as well as empathy for others. We appreciate you, Mother Nature. Mother Nature, we are truly grateful for what you have made us. No doubt you did the best you could. However, with all due respect, Mother Nature, we must say that in many ways you have done a poor job with the human condition. You have made us vulnerable to disease and damage. You compel us to age and die, just as we're beginning to attain wisdom. You were miserly in the extent to which you gave us awareness of our bodily, cognitive, and emotional processes. You held out on us by giving the sharpest senses to some other animals. You made us function only under narrow environmental conditions. You gave us limited memory, poor impulse control, tribalistic, xenophobic urges. Is that true? Yeah. And you for God to give us the operating manual for ourselves. While you have made us you have made us glorious, yet deeply flawed. You seem to have lost interest in our further evolution some 100,000 years ago. Or perhaps you've been biding your time, waiting for us to take the next step ourselves. Either way, we have reached our childhood's end, Mother Nature. We have decided that it is time to amend the human condition. We do not do this lightly, carelessly, or disrespectfully, but cautiously, intelligently, and in pursuit of excellence. We intend to make you proud of us, Mother Nature. Over the coming decades, we will pursue a series of changes in our own constitution, initiated with the tools of biotechnology, guided by critical and creative thinking. In particular, we declare the following 7 amendments to the human constitution. Amendment number 1. We shall no longer tolerate the tyranny of aging and death. Through genetic alterations, cellular manipulation, synthetic organs, and any means necessary, we will endow ourselves with enduring vitality and remove our expiration date. We will decide for ourselves how long we will live. Now he goes through 7 amendments here. I'm not going to read them all, but they have to do with various enhancements of who we are using technology. And then it concludes, these amendments to our Constitution will move us from a human to a transhuman. See where the word came from. Transhuman conditions as individuals. We believe that individual transhumanizing will also allow us to form relationships, cultures, and politics, I hope, of unprecedented innovation, richness, freedom, and responsibility. We reserve the right to make further amendments collectively and individually, rather than seeking a state of final perfection. We will continue to pursue new forms of excellence according to our own values and as technology allows. Your ambitious human offspring. Okay, that captures what transhumanism is. Now, the leading transhumanist organization is used to be called World Transhumanist Association. Is now called Humanity Plus. Humanity Plus. They have an informative website. The number of members are relatively small, but the impact of the transhumanist thinking is huge because it goes into Silicon Valley, into high tech, and it's in. And you'll get this: your tax money is paying for movement forward on transhumanist projects.
How? How so?
How so? Because in the Pentagon, there is a wing, an office in the Pentagon called DARPA, D-A-R-P-A. I wish I could remember the Defense something. DARPA's purpose is a research wing of the Pentagon. Its goal is to make our military more effective. And one way to do that is to make soldiers who can get fixed quicker when they fall on the battlefield, who can see better, or have who can to make our military better. And some of the offshoots of DARPA fall right into the hands of what the transhumanists are all about, which is enhancing human beings. So, like it or not, your tax money is going in that direction. And Elon Musk, my guess is he's not going to cut that piece of it.
You're reading my mind.
So, okay. Now, let me make this point, then I'll go. So, there is a Christian Transhumanist Association started by a pastor, and you can go on their website, Christian Transhumanist Association. In full disclosure, I'm an academic advisor to them, okay? But they embrace technology, they embrace science, and they say that, some of the developments in science and technology are consistent with a Christian understanding of things. So, for example, here's a term that's bounced around a lot in the literature that I work with. Co-creator. Co-creator. So the idea is that God, in the Judeo-Christian tradition, God created human beings. And created human beings in God's own image. Now there's a long debate throughout Christian history about what that means, about what it means to say we're in God's image. But one thing that it means is that that some people suggest it means is that we are creative, we are given intelligence, we're given capabilities, right? And so we are endowed by God in this vision with the capability, cognitive capability, to do science, and technology is an applied science. And so the idea is that we're to tend the garden. We are to build things, and that this is a means of God's grace in the world, because God created us with these abilities, right? So we are in this vision co-creators with God, because God has given us the ability to create things. Now, of course, we create things and they are used for mischievous purposes, right? I mean, nuclear power can light our room, or it can destroy the world, right? So that's not to say everything that human beings create is good, but the potential is there for us to be co-creators with God. Medical technology, medical science. I mean, we're in a whole section of the city and the university over there that is all about this. And from this Christian vision, that is the work of God, the hands of God, the grace of God, coming through. Okay? Many Christians believe that. And so the idea is that the developments in human enhancement, according to the Christian Transhumanist Association, they embrace this as God's work in the world. And our job, according to the Christian Transhumanist Association, our job as Christians, as people of faith, is to make daggone sure that these developments are moved in a healthy direction, in a productive direction, not in a direction that is destructive and terrifying. That makes sense? Yeah. Yeah.
But why wouldn't humans become much more robotic in this scene, and rather than feeling beings? Because now we know that trees, if you read the book Mother Tree, that there are all these microorganisms in the soil, and that they send out to other trees planted near them, or the seeds that come up. There's an interconnectedness. And in the animal kingdom, if a baby animal is not near its mother, it oftentimes will not survive. Or a human can lay down next to that animal and it can get well. And so it seems to me the interconnectedness that creates real feeling could be missing from this picture.
Association, and many of the people that the scholars that I work with at the American Academy of Religion, look, for 20 years, religion scholars have been working on this stuff, but it's just not made it out it's just now getting out into the public because of ChatGPT in 2024, pushing some of these issues out. Because I think that every faith community on the planet should be having study courses in this and should be educating themselves about this. Because if we don't, then who's going to make these decisions? Well, I don't trust big tech to do it because their bottom line is money. I don't trust the government to do it because, who knows who's in charge of the government. And I don't trust terrorists to do it, right? I don't trust our enemy countries to do it. So part of what my mission is is to help educate the faith communities to get engaged in this. Now, the faith communities can have a lot to say with the concern that you expressed, which is that as we go down this path, increasingly, exponentially increasing, it's getting fast. I mean, it's just, you can hardly keep up with it all. Then there are going to be challenges, and one of the challenges is community. Is that we get so high tech that we lose community, we lose this interconnection. And this is exactly an example of how the faith communities, Christianity, I'll talk about that since I'm from that tradition, that Christianity with its koinonia, its rich tradition of fellowship and koinonia, community, can keep reminding, right, Silicon Valley. Now look, as we move into these high-tech situations and these enhancements and the transhumanists, as we move here, we don't want to lose community. We don't want to lose connections. We don't want to lose what is the best about humanity. So I take your point. Yeah, I don't want to lose to a robotic kind of future. That's not what I want. And I don't think the transhumanists want that either. But it's a danger. Yeah. So, yes, let's weigh in.
But doesn't this conversation also mean that we think as humans we have more power than perhaps, if we believe in a spiritual world, couldn't that have more power than humans?
You have to ask that a different way. I'm not sure what you're asking.
If humans, when they die, their spirit leaves, and that spirit joins other spirits, is there not an influence that's coming from that spiritual body that could be stronger than man?
I'm having a hard time getting my head around that.
Does anybody think of a way to ask that better, or does anybody even understand what I'm asking?
Let me just ramble some and see if it fits. So many of the transhumanists, not all, because religious transhumanists are growing in number within the transhumanist community. But many transhumanists they don't care about religion. They're atheist or agnostic. They're just interested in science and applied science technology.
Suppose they're wrong.
Huh?
Suppose they're wrong.
Yeah.
Is my question.
Yeah, and my point is that whether they're right or wrong, I don't see that the faith communities can still bring a thoughtful, ethical, and theological perspective to the science and technology. That's where the faith communities need to be playing a role. I mean, I agree with that.
I guess my question is, why do you pray? What is prayer about?
Me personally, or
Generally. Why do we pray? Do we think that there's going to be an intervention?
people pray for different, this is not a religious meeting, so I want to be careful not to cross the line here. But
Like if somebody's sick and they're praying to
yeah,
get well.
okay.
Do they believe there's going to be spiritual intervention?
Many people who pray for healing, yes, they believe that God, some people would pray, just historically, and, looking at some people would pray because they want, some like dramatic miracle like the raising of Lazarus literally understood in the Bible. Others would pray that the hands of a doctor, would do that, whatever.
So it sounds to me that Christian humanism is believing that they're stronger than whatever that
Oh,
spirit
no,
is that would raise
No,
Lazarus
no,
from
oh,
the
okay,
dead.
I see what you mean. I think I see. No, look, the Christian transhumanists would say that we are co-creators with God, and that the medical technologies that are going to, save the patient, our loved one who's in the hospital, that is God operating. That is God using technology. God created that technology using the human instrument of creativity and brain power. Yeah. You had a question?
I have two questions. One is, I can understand how technology might produce a healthier, higher functioning body.
Right.
I kind of can't get my mind around how technology might produce a more moral person.
Yeah. I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. So how could we be sure that all these bodies, would there be some kind of a screening? You're a certain person, and we don't want you to come back again, no matter how good your body is.
We don't want Hitler to come back.
Right.
Or Musk.
Oh, my God.
So that's one question. The other question is
Yeah.
this. In all the work that, Thomas Berry, are you familiar with his
Yes.
work? Okay, all the strategies that he lies out for making the planet survive and humanity survive,
Yeah.
because obviously we can't survive without a planet.
Right.
His kind of criteria center around paying attention to how Mother Nature works
Mm-hmm.
and making your strategies for
Yeah.
the future in keeping with how
Yeah.
Mother Nature works.
Yeah. So I'll answer that question first. So we'll respond. So Mother Nature and evolution, can be looked at in different ways. One way to look at it is using high tech and so on is interfering with Mother Nature. It's like we're moving, and I have some strong commitments to environmental justice and ethics. So Thomas Berry, I agree with his vision. But another way to look at evolution and Mother Nature is that the Silicon Valley revolution, what's happening with all of the high tech and the stuff that the transhumanists are pushing, is a part of the evolutionary development of scheme. It's just, we built fire. We don't build fire. We figured out how to do fire. We figured out how to, tame the atom. And now we're just in high tech. What's different about it is that it's happening so fast and so widespread that it feels like it's not Mother Nature. But one view of evolution is that it's just the unfolding, it's the cognitive power of the human species that has gotten to the point that it's creating, these technologies. Now, we have to be careful here because runaway AI is a serious problem. And I have a whole nother talk on that. Super intelligence, that is a serious problem. So, while Mother Nature may look like an evolutionary scheme, may look like it is developing and moving forward all the time in the grand scheme of things, it might do itself in with super intelligence if we're not careful. Your first question about moral, yeah. I and my colleague were actually sort of helped create this concept that there's 5 categories of human enhancement. One of them is moral, and you say, well, how in the world would that be? Okay, there was a book that was written a few years ago, Unfit for the Future. We are making all these developments in cognitive and physical enhancement and anti-aging and all that. we don't have the morals to keep up with this stuff. We're going to get ourselves in trouble. So the book is Unfit for the Future, the Need for Moral Enhancement. Now, we're very early in this, but serotonin has been linked to aggression. Ritalin reduces the aggressive impulse. Oxytocin can create trust, more trust, okay? And so we have, right now, we have some things we can give people that create more trust and reduce aggression. And so you may say, let's just put it in the water. Wow, why not? Or at least in the prisons, run it through, right? But it's complicated. Do you want a woman who's being abused by her husband to be more trusting? Do you want your soldiers on the battlefield to be more trusting and less aggressive? You see, it's a complicated thing. So if you start doing moral enhancement, which we can do at a primitive level, but the thing is, we're going to get more pharmaceuticals, we're going to get more capabilities of tinkering with people's what we call moral impulses. But who gets to decide what's moral? See, it's complicated. But that speaks to your moral enhancement.
The other piece is, that as you pointed out, everything evolves, technology evolves.
Yes.
But how do we know? There's no way of knowing 500 years from now how the Earth or the universe itself will be evolving. Will we be bringing people back into a world that's not suited to life?
You mean with cryonics? Yeah,
That's
that's a big concern.
Yeah.
In other words, okay. So I'm going to now play the anti-cryonics devil's advocate. Okay, why you wouldn't want to do cryonics? There's two reasons that come immediately to mind. One is that it takes trial and error to sort these things out. If you're going to sign up to be cryonically preserved, I recommend that you say, I don't want to be one of the first ones. Because if they bring you back and they're just figuring out how to do it, they may bring you back in a way that doesn't really work very well and creates great suffering. Right? You may have your cognitive all messed up and so on. So if you ever sign up, I recommend saying, I want to be like number 10,000, not number 1, okay? So a poorly revived patient could be a problem. Number 2 is you not only want to have enough money to be cryonically preserved, but I don't want to come back and have to live on the street, right? And so if you're going to come back 500 years from now, it's like, are you going to come back with the financial ability to, enjoy the perfect body that, you paid to get? And so, Yes. And so Alcor is very aware, the Alcor members are very aware, Alcor is very aware of this, and they have considerations and they have conversations about how to construct your portfolio and how to create your estate. And by the way, I ordered it just for fun. I ordered the paperwork. Let's say I was going to sign up because, I researched this stuff. And the paperwork's up that high. I mean, I didn't take it to my Warden Smith, the tax attorney or estate attorney, because it would cost $10 million for him to plow through it. But my point is, they have thought about this issue. And there are ways to put your portfolio in a trust and all that so that when you come back, you're not destitute. All right? But that's a problem because you don't know what world you're coming back to.
Who are you exactly?
And let me just say this. We got about 5 more minutes, but let me say this is kind of fun. This has to do with not only cryonics, but super longevity. So I do these informal surveys. I do it with my classes. You know, I'm a dental assistant, cleaning my teeth, I say, yeah, how would you vote? So if there were a pill, right, that you could take right now and live indefinitely in a healthy body, raise your hand if you would take the pill. Just kidding me. Okay, now, most people in here are female. Let's say that, well, I shouldn't have told you that, but let's say that you found out that your loved ones, your family, and your best 3 or 4 friends have convinced that, yeah, they want to live indefinitely and they're going to take the pill. How many of you might raise your hand then? No, okay. All right, well, this is an older age group, and I've got to factor that in, right? But when I ask this question of my classes and of groups that I talk to that are of a younger age, then generally speaking, what happens is more men's hands go up. Yes, you know, that testosterone. Yes, I want to live forever. I don't care about anything, right? And the women like, no. And I say, why? And they say, well, because I don't want to live 500 years with my family and my friends. And then if I factor in that your family and friends are going to do this, then some of the hands start going up. So we need sociologists to help us sort of begin to understand transhumanism and its projects and how people are responding. But,
Now, question I would have, another ethical question. There might be some people that we don't want to ever come back to life. They're not a contributing member, they're just troublemakers. Are we going to have laws that govern who can live forever?
You get no argument from me there, and a list is coming to my mind as we speak. But that is there's like. Look, I used to do biblical studies. For 20 years, I published in biblical studies. Every single verse of the Bible has been sliced and diced a million times, and I love the Bible, and I always will, and I teach the Bible, but it got kind of boring at an academic level because it's just so been worked over so much. This area here of transhumanism and your question, it is so untouched. I mean, there is so many questions out there that we need to be addressing, and we're not addressing, and we're not up to speed on. And it scares the daylights out of me that we are moving into this technological future without the faith communities having much education about this.
But what will destroy this concept, if we keep having wars and we just kill people on battlefields, you don't have time to go get them frozen. And until we can learn to get along with each other, I'm thinking that freezing folks is not going to work.
I have a question too that ties into what Barbara was asking about evolution. And I just have learned recently about a group of people, they're called, I think, the Bajau, B-A-J-A-U, a seafaring population in Southeast Asia known as sea nomads because they can stay in the water much longer than other humans, and they have larger spleens that store more oxygenated blood. And these things happen out of necessity, and so as our world evolves and humans evolve, are those frozen bodies going to be able to keep up?
See, they're going to be swimming in, some of them will be swimming in water because there's not going to be enough land to hold us all.
Exactly.
I like water.
I mean, yes. The patients that are frozen, when they're brought back, they will be brought back, and this is be all in the contract. They will be brought back with the best available technology, medical facility.
To grow them a larger spleen or whatever's needed.
Yeah. So look, what's happening down at Wake Forest? They're growing bladders. They're growing vagina. At Wake Forest, this will blow your mind, and this is probably, we have to stop in just a second, but and I would take my students to Wake Forest to look at this, but so down at Wake Forest Institute of Regenerative Medicine, world famous, they have grown in the lab bladders, vaginas, blood vessels, and they're working on 30 others. Now give them 100 years. I don't know if they're doing spleens already, but they will.
They done the brain.
So yeah, and you know, whatever, yeah, 500 years from now, you'll be coming back into a tremendous world of technology. And you want to, we haven't even talked about robotics in here. Just Google robotics and look at some of the, I mean, there's an AI robot that has been given citizenship in Saudi Arabia. You don't even know that, but there are AI robots that are going to get to the point where they show up at a lifelong learning program, and we're not going to know they're robots. Okay.
Some of that
so
artificial intelligence is stupid. They don't know what I'm trying to say. They act like they do.
It's not there yet, yeah, for sure. Look, I thank you so much for your participation. Tremendous questions, and I always end a few minutes early so you can fill out the form. Okay? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And I think it's the first time I've ever had an undertaker in my class.
You know what, this is so, I just love academic family. This is interesting. That's all.